We are going to take some notes on ions. An ion is an atom with a charge. It gets that way because it gains or loses electrons. A cation is an ion with a positive charge. Metals typically become cations when they become ions. This is because they lose one or more electron. So for example, aluminum is a metal because it's to the left of that staircase on the periodic table. And aluminum is atomic number 13, so it has 13 protons, and it got a positive charge because it lost 3 electrons. So whenever we see that little plus sign, that reminds us that it actually lost electrons, and the 3 tells us how many it lost. So aluminum lost 3 electrons, that's why it only has 10 left. The other kind of ion that we're going to talk about are anions. Anions are ions with a negative charge. Well, that's because they've gained electrons. They've gained 1 or more extra electrons. The nonmetals tend to form anions. So an example of that would be something like oxygen. So if we look on the periodic table, oxygen is element O, it's number 8. And instead of calling it oxygen as an ion, we actually changed the ending of the anions. We changed their ending to IDE. So you've probably heard of this word oxide. That's oxygen once it becomes an ion. Chlorine becomes chloride, fluorine becomes fluoride. So we know the negative ones, they change their ending to IDE like that. Well, because it was oxygen, atomic number 8, it started off having 8 protons and 8 electrons. But to get that negative charge, it actually stole 2 electrons. So the nonmetals are thieves. They like to steal extra electrons. And when they do that, they become negatively charged, and they get that. And that negative sign just reminds us that they have gained however many electrons. So with oxygen, it must have gained 2 electrons. And we can predict all these charges from the periodic table. So we've got our periodic table that you have already annotated at one point, and you've got your valence electrons and your number of energy levels on it. Well, now I want you to get your periodic table out, and we're going to put the charges of these ions, of the atoms when they become ions, on the periodic table. So the common charge for group 1 are positive 1. The positive charge for group 2 are positive 2. For these groups in the middle, the transition metals, their charge can vary. It just depends on what they're bonded to and how they're bonded. So we're just going to say their charge varies. It can be positive 1, positive 2, positive 3, but it's always positive. And then finally, we're going to call these positive 3 and positive 4 in groups 13 and 14. But it's at the next group, at group 15, that the pattern starts to change, and these can get negative charges. So these are the nonmetals over here, as we know. They're the ones that tend to get negative charges by gaining electrons. So there's our little staircase that we've colored already. Our metals are to the left. Those metals, they're the ones that tended to lose electrons. And when they lose electrons, they get a positive charge. The nonmetals over there on the right-hand side of the periodic table, they tended to gain electrons. They stole those electrons from the metals, and that gives them a negative charge. And they changed their ending to IDE when that happened.